On this episode of the podcast, we talk about how vital your peer group is for the success of your business. We also talk about the Mastermind Principle and why you should drop everything and start or join a mastermind now. What's up, friend? I'm Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the Grow Your Video Business podcast, where I talk about how to grow your video business without burning out. We cover stuff on this show like how to get more clients, being more productive without sacrificing creativity, and how to get paid what you're worth as a filmmaker or studio owner. I am super happy that you're here. Happy New Year. I think this is the first episode of the year. Crazy. We are in 2022, and I'm hoping and praying that this is your biggest and bestest year ever, and you're starting out in a great spot. I mean, where else would you want to be right now? So anyway, this episode is going to be really incredible. Cliff is a past guest. He's been a coach of mine for a long time. And just really powerful conversation. The guy is amazing. So buckle your seatbelts and prepare thyself. Before we get into the episode, I wanted to tell you about the 5-day challenge that we're going to do. This was something that we did last year, and we are rebooting to kind of help you have the best year that you can have this year. It's a totally free event. You can register at studiosherpas.com/challenge. And we're going to be going through 5 days of teaching where I'm going to pull stuff from our flagship course, the Video Business Academy. And I'm just going to be giving away a lot of information to you to help set you up so that you can have an amazing year. And you're going to be able to connect with a lot of other people inside of the Studio Sherpas community, people that listen to the show, and people that came last year absolutely loved it, and we're going to do it again. So prepare thyself. I don't even know what that means. That's it. Let's get into the rest of the show now, okay? What is up, friends? Hey, welcome to this episode. Today, my guest is actually a good friend. His name is Cliff Ravenscraft.
We're such great friends. What's your last name?
What's your name again? Cliff Ravenscraft. Oh, boy. Wow. I told you.
It's good to see you again, Ryan Crowell.
Brian.
Coral?
So Cliff is a business mentor, one of my business mentors. He's a professional coach and motivational speaker, and obviously can laugh when his friend butchers his name. His focus is to help you break free from any beliefs or behaviors that are holding you back from living the life of your dreams and doing the work you feel most called to do in this world. Cliff Ravenscraft, welcome back to the podcast.
Dude, I consider it an incredible honor to be invited back a second time. You know, you wonder sometimes when you go into a podcast interview, having just drinking, you like that, drinking? Having just drank a full-blown lemon drop bang energy drink, and then you go, let's do this thing. Thankfully today, my caffeine intake has been limited to the Gold Peak tea, so I think we're going to be all right.
If you don't know what Cliff is talking about, you should listen to the previous episode that we've done together, because it was definitely one of my favorites. It actually was, I think we launched it at the beginning of 2020, if I'm remembering correctly, and it had a profound impact in my life, and it led to a bunch of time that you and I got to spend together. So in that episode, Cliff actually had some really good questions for me, and we chatted for quite a bit after the interview was over, and we just had an incredible time together. So Cliff, just to get this out of the way, and I've told you this many times before, but you have had a profound impact on my life, the way that you have helped me kind of like, the mind stuff that gets in the way, the stuff that's not true The way that you've been able to help bring clarity and truth into my life has been such an amazing gift. And I feel like not only has it had a big impact on me, but I've actually been able to help other people with that as well. So I thank you, and I'm really, really just grateful for the time that we've had together. So I guess that's a wrap.
Well, thank you, Ryan. No, seriously, I appreciate those words. And I got to tell you, what you're speaking about, so many people, mentors in my life, have done the same for me. And there was a season of my life where I thought, man, my future, I want to reach hundreds of thousands of people. Matter of fact, I've talked about a vision that I have of a stadium event where one day tens of thousands of people would come there because of a conference that I put together in this stadium. And I'm not saying that that's not going to happen naturally, but I must admit that I struggled to give myself permission to have such a lofty dream or vision. Then I began to believe it was possible after talking to hundreds of people and say, I totally see that. And I'll be one of the first people at your first live event. And I'm like, well, over 100 people have said that they'd come to my first stadium event. I just need 49,900 other people to talk to about this. But over time, Ryan, my shift and my focus about how I go about building my brand has changed. And I really began to say, you know what? I don't want to go so wide as much as I want to go deep in relationships. And so I had a powerful conversation with Michael Hyatt, who's one of my business mentors. And after that, I'd made the decision to focus on 2 paid mastermind groups, 12 members maximum in each group, and 3 to 5 one-on-one coaching clients. And that's all I will take at any one given period of time. And that's been my business model for the last 3 years. That's the only streams of income. And I got to tell you, the impact that I'm having in just a handful of people's lives, but then residually to see it flow through to the people they influence is, I realize, man, I can actually scratch that. I already have been influencing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people indirectly through the thousands of people I've worked with over the last 15 years since I've been doing all this.
Yeah, I think I don't want to just like gloss over that, because that is actually, I don't know if you know this, but that is a lot of my same story. Like years ago when I was in college, like I had these just like huge visions for my life that I would too be in some, large venue with thousands of people. And that's how I thought I could make an impact in the world. And fortunately, I had some older, wiser people come alongside me that said the most powerful thing that I can do, number one, starts with my family. Currently the 4 people that I have direct access to every single day. I have the biggest impact and influence on them. And then whatever one-on-one time or small group time I can get with a few people. And, it's explained to me very similarly, not to get like religious or anything, but the life of Jesus. And when you look at who he spent time with the multitudes. He spent time with 100. He spent time with 12. He spent more time with 3. He spent more time with 1. And just knowing that his goal wasn't to, get in a stadium, but his what he did was he spent time with a very small group of people. And, the time that you and I have had together has, like I said, I use the word profound, and I'm not using that lightly. I've made some really big life-changing decisions because of the time that you and I have had together. And if I just heard you at a conference or heard your podcasts are amazing, your teachings are great, but if I didn't actually get you to hear me and to see me, it would have a very different impact on me. And I would probably say like, oh man, Cliff's show is awesome. And the stuff that he teaches it's really good. And his book is great. And, but for me to make some really big changes in my own life, I would say it wouldn't be as profound. Yeah. So I just love the idea of this, like the mastermind, this group of 12 people, where you're consistently getting time with them. And then knowing that if you do have something of value to offer to those people, that it's going to get planted there, and then from there it's going to grow and spread. And I am a firm believer in the power of getting time with fewer people, So tell us more a little bit about like Mastermind Group. I know for me years ago when I first started my business, I had no idea what that. I didn't even know what that meant. So explain a little bit. And I know there's probably different definitions, but from your perspective, what is that? What does that look like?
Right. So mastermind groups became incredibly popularized by Napoleon Hill back in, was it in the 30s maybe, when Think and Grow Rich came out as a book. There's an entire chapter on the Mastermind Principle. And as a result of that, there's been an entire self-help, personal development, professional development industry that has popped up since those early days of those motivational speakers like Earl Nightingale and Conant and all the guys, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics, all these things. So everybody today is talking about mastermind groups, the power of mastermind groups, at least when I got into business. I started full-time self-employed in 2008. I had lived a lifetime as an employee, and I'm like, I've never really heard of a mastermind group. And then all of a sudden, Dan Miller, author of the book 48 Days to the Work You Love, which I heard about him through Dave Ramsey. They were best friends, and Dave Ramsey kept recommending this book called 48 Days to the Work You Love. And the whole idea is that Dave was saying, hey, you could probably succeed more by doing work that you love rather than trying to become more successful at doing work that you hate. And that message appealed to me. So I go read this book, and then I'm starting to listen to Dan Miller, and Dan Miller's talking about the fact that for 10 years, every week for 10 years, he has been a part of a weekly meeting of 10 guys who get together. It's called the Eagles Mastermind, and it's Dave Ramsey, Dan Miller, and then there are 8 other guys, and I've subsequently become friends with several of those people in that group. And I'm like blown away by this whole concept. So what is it? And you're right, there is multiple definitions of a mastermind group, but the first thing I'll define is the Mastermind Principle. And the Mastermind Principle simply states that when 2 or more people gather together in a spirit of perfect harmony towards a specific outcome, those 2 or more people can accomplish more in 1 year than any of them could accomplish on their own in a lifetime. The idea is that these people, you get 2 people having a conversation, and one person says, listen, I'm really struggling. I can't see how to overcome this obstacle. And each person is limited in the way they see the world. They're limited by their beliefs that they have. They're limited by the education that they have as far as what books they've read, what courses they've seen. Hopefully we're all expanding in all of this, but we're still limited to our perspective of how we see and perceive the world. And so you get into a conversation with one other person, practically any other person. That person has the ability to just say, have you ever thought about doing this? Because it just seems obvious to them because of a book they've read or a course that they went to, a speaker that they heard at a conference or whatever. And then it's like, no, I've never thought about that. Yeah, so I was at a conference and the speaker said this, and he talked about this, and he went and did this. And it's like, well, I never thought about that. And that person walks away, goes and looks up that speaker, reads his book, and it's like, boom, he's off to the races. He's basically jumped over that hurdle. That obstacle's no longer there as a result of a single conversation. So the idea is that 2 minds come together, and when those 2 minds come together in a spirit of perfect harmony, it almost as if there's a third mind. Now, not to get all religious, but there was this saying, there's this very popular guy who said, wherever 2 or more are gathered together in my name, I'm there in their midst, and anything they agree upon, it will be done. Now, I stretch my understanding of what does it mean when 2 or more are gathered in my name. And in a way, I see that as when 2 or more people gather together in a spirit of harmony in hopes that each will be able to proceed further in life doing what they feel they were created to do. In my way, that's another way of saying in my name. And I believe that what Jesus was saying in that statement is not limited only to believers. That it's any person who's on the path of life of doing more of what they feel called to do in this world. And so that's this mastermind principle. So the Mastermind Group, to define that, it's pretty much the same. It's the only thing is we're going to add the word group. The Mastermind Group is defined as a group of 2 or more people who come together in a spirit of harmony and are committed to the success of a specific outcome. Now, a mastermind group, that definition, if we just leave it there, you could have a group that meets one time. I know, Ryan, you recently hosted a one-day event that turned out to have a mastermind format to it. And I've hosted also what I used to call the next level one-day business masterminds. And people would come to these events. Most people had never met each other before, but for 8 hours straight, we have each person have a hot seat. And by the end of the day, each person has had so much insight. They've got pages of notes, and their lives are never going to be the same. They'll never be able to go back to seeing the world from the same perspective that they had before. Their obstacles have been overcome, and they're off to the races. And those people may never really see each other again, but it's still a mastermind group. However, the most effective mastermind groups, and in one definition I like, is a mastermind group is a small group of people, 2 or more, who come together in a spirit of perfect harmony. You'll notice that always in a spirit of perfect harmony is always going to be in there. That meet consistently to encourage one another, where every member is committed to the success of every other member. That's how I define the mastermind groups that I facilitate uniquely.
Love that. When you use that phrase perfect harmony, is that, the way that I kind of hear that is I have your best interest in mind, right? So like I may not agree with, what you're saying you think you should do or whatever, but from what I know of you and from what I know that you want, I'm able to kind of like speak into that. Is that
absolutely
close?
Yes, I'm thrilled that you pointed that out, because I don't want anybody to assume that a spirit of perfect harmony means that we're all in harmony, meaning that everybody agrees with everybody. We're all each other's cheerleaders, and it's like, listen, we're going to encourage you no matter what direction you decide you're going into and all of this stuff. No, I have been a part of a green room mastermind, is what we call it, that's met weekly, every week since October 2010, and Pat Flynn and I started this group together. And I got to tell you, over the years, there are 6 of us in this group. And over the years, we've actually had heated arguments in our meetings. But yet always in a spirit of perfect harmony. Mm-hmm. Heated arguments in the spirit of perfect harmony.
How does somebody get that? I feel like, having known you for a little over a year, or no, almost a year, having known you for a year or so, I feel like that's like a natural, like you have that ability to is that like a train? Is that can you learn how to lovingly challenge and or like be in perfect harmony with somebody? Like, what are there any like ways to go about that?
Trial and error, I'd say. It's a growing experience. Some people are further along in their interpersonal relational skills than others, and I have been involved. So my history goes all the way back in 1991. I felt like I wanted to be involved in full-time ministry, and so I'm leading small group Bible studies for decades before I, started business masterminds and stuff like that. So for me, when you bring small groups of people together, there's always conflict. I mean, people are individuals and stuff. So I can tell you in the early days, not everything was in a spirit of perfect harmony. And there were a lot of times when I used to take everything personally. It's like, oh my gosh, I want everybody to like me. I don't want anybody to think of me differently than the way I want them to perceive me. And so much of my own peace and happiness was determined on what other people thought about me, what other people said about me, or what people did to me. And I can tell you right now, there was no such thing as a spirit of perfect harmony when well-being is placed on the reaction of what somebody else does. And so, quite frankly, Ryan, what I'm talking about there, a lot of people, a majority of people, tie their happiness to what other people think, say, or do. And so it is something that I believe really, truly needs to be overcome for us to experience any true success in life. And a mastermind group, especially if it's a healthy, this is why I always use the phrase, anytime I talk about the mastermind group and I define it, I always use in a spirit of perfect harmony, because there are a lot of mastermind groups out there. There are a lot of small group Bible study groups and all these other that are not in a spirit of perfect harmony. And a lot of people get burned and they get hurt and they get wounded in these groups. But in a safe, healthy mastermind group alliance, and one where at least the leader of the group understands how to facilitate harmony within the group, and where at least a handful of other people in the group have grown in their interpersonal relational skills, that they can also bring about a spirit of harmony within the group, so that if somebody comes in and there's a little bit of discord or disharmony, in the way it gets quashed in a loving way, not in a not in a reactive way, but in a, hey, let's come along and help this person through. And there's a lot. It's not so much let's tell you how to think and see the world, but let's ask you some questions about how you're currently perceiving the world, and how is that serving you, and how is that helping you, and is that always right, and who are the people you respect, and lovingly, people can be brought into a greater sense of harmony with other people. And most importantly, it's really having harmony with yourself. That's where most people struggle. Usually we hear this phrase all the time. Don't worry about what other people do or say. What they actually say to you, what they do to you, has nothing to do with you, and it's everything with what's going on inside of themselves. And so that's where most people are actually having the greatest discord, is they haven't come to full acceptance of who they are.
Yeah, I think that's great. I feel like one of the things that has been most helpful that you kind of, as you taught me the Mastermind Principle and how to run a mastermind group, is the, like, when somebody's on the hot seat, somebody's got 60 minutes to share like their big frustration in their business or the thing that they're trying to overcome, or whatever it is, creating that space for people to ask clarifying questions to really be able to understand, right? There's that saying, like, seek to understand instead of to be understood, or something like that.
Yeah, I like that.
I feel like that's been such a helpful tool, because as in this like spirit of harmony, when let's say you and I are in a mastermind group together and you share this thing and I don't get it, or I don't feel like that's a smart move, and I'm thinking from my perspective, right? But if I can ask you and try to formulate some questions around, like, well, tell us more about that, Cliff. Like, what is the end in mind that you have? Like, what are you trying to achieve? And like, have you tried before? And why hasn't it worked? And why does it keep not working? And like, trying to dig in, because you were the one who said, I think even on the last podcast episode, the thing that we think is the struggle or the problem or the frustration, whatever, is on the surface, there's always like something else. Like, that's not the thing. Like, if I want to make more money in my business, that's probably not the thing. There's probably some...
very, very few people ever want to make more money. They want to feel a feeling or an emotion that they believe they will feel if they had more money, if they were making more money. And so the question, and so what they want is, they want peace, or they want certainty, they want faith, they want calmness in their thoughts, and they want their emotional state to not be bouncing all over the place. Well, guess what? Having more money usually doesn't offer you any of those things, but that's what they really want. But they go, if left unchecked, if left uncovered, the real thing that they truly want, they go in pursuit of the money, and they go get it. And it usually, the pursuit of the money will come. I mean, there are strategies, there's techniques, there's things you can do to go get more money. But oftentimes, those things come with greater responsibilities, bigger commitments, a handful of obligations, and most people are over-obligated and under-committed anyway. And next thing you know, it's like, man, they've got all this money. And even if it's more profit, I'm not just talking about more income, but there's more expense. But even if there's more profit, even if they double, triple the amount of money they even bring home, oftentimes those come along with a much greater amount of responsibility. And if you haven't been able to figure out how internally to find peace and internally to find security and certainty and faith, if you haven't been able to do it at a lower income, it's not those things that you truly desire are not going to magically show up when you have 3 times the amount of income coming into your household budget.
Yes. So it's things like that where it's like, oh, wow. Okay. So I thought I wanted more money. You get to the end of your hot seat and it's like, oh, that's not it at all. Like what I want is peace, or, so I think that practice of like really asking good questions and trying to, you have this person's best interest in mind. And I want you to make more money, but really if there's something deeper than just making more money, that's what I want for you. That's really what I want. For me, I think one of the other really valuable parts, there's a whole bunch of valuable reasons why being in a mastermind group is so good, but having the consistency, seeing people, not just, the facilitator, but seeing other people that I'm kind of like locked arms with, feeling like we're kind of on this mission together to see each other succeed and excel in life, and knowing that there's some level of accountability. If I had my hot seat a month ago and I'm, my time's coming back up, or people are checking in and like, hey, well, you said that, but by the end of this quarter you wanted to do that thing. How are you doing? Or are you going to get it done? And I'm like, oh man, I know going into this thing, like the things that I've committed to myself, to the group, and things that I've spoken out loud, they're more likely to get done because I'm sharing them with other people. And that for me, it's been really helpful in a very, harmonious and healthy way where people are rooting for me, but also, they're going to say like, hey, like, I just want to check in on that thing because you told us like this was really important. So is it still important? Or, and if it's not, what's going
changed?
on? What changed?
Yeah. I love all of that. When I think about the power of the mastermind groups, the benefits, because that's kind of what I hear you talking about, is the benefit of this accountability, this cheerleader. And by the way, it's great to have cheerleaders. It's great to have people who will celebrate your successes. But oftentimes what we need are people who can be our cheerleaders, who actually understand what it is that we're going after.
Yeah.
This is why I think everybody who is a professional in any given industry should be in a mastermind group with other professionals. Whether it's the same exact industry, you should be with other professionals. Like, for example, if you're full-time self-employed, I definitely think you need to be in a mastermind group with other full-time self-employed individuals. I'll never forget, and I've talked stories about this in my Upgrade Your Peer Group podcast, which I will promote at the end of the show if anybody's interested. But I talk about the fact that when I first became full-time self-employed, I lived a lifetime as an employee up until then. And so prior to 2008, my peer group, actually pretty much not just my peer group, pretty much everyone I knew had also been an employee their entire life. So here I am, going out and trying new things as a business owner. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling my peer group, which are these people who have been employees their entire life, and they're like, oh, Cliff, I'm so excited for you. Go after that. That sounds like a great idea. Whereas if I had upgraded my peer group to some self-employed business owners who have maybe gotten a little further down the road, or maybe some, they're right around doing some of the same things that I'm doing now, I could have bounced ideas off of them, and I may have gotten a cheerleading session, or I might have had a little pushback. Hey, let me give you a little word of warning. You may succeed where I didn't, but let me tell you a little bit of the troubles I ran into when I went down that route. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but I just thought you should hear this. And I'm like, wow, I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
I think and occasionally I would hear that, and I'm like, hey, I really appreciate your feedback. I think I'm still going to see if I might be an outlier in this area, and I think I'm still going to try it. And sometimes I went and did it in spite of some not pushback, but some words of caution. Yeah. And I succeeded where others didn't. And of course, there was some where I'm like, oh, you guys were right. And, it just there's a scripture in the Old Testament, in Proverbs, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. Now, hear this. It does not say in that scripture, plans fail for lack of counsel, but if you follow the advice of many advisors, they succeed. No, it just says you plans succeed when you at least share your plans with many advisors. Does not say you have to actually follow the advice of those advisors, but getting feedback from people who understand what you're talking about is mission critical to success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really good. As you were saying all of that, I just rewound to, a bunch of years ago when I first started my business. I was not shy. Like, I'm pretty extroverted personality, and I also can be pretty open, honest, authentic, for lack of a better word. So any person that was in the industry, I was trying to grab lunch with, grab coffee with, share kind of where I was at, ask them what do they do? So I was having these mini mastermind sessions with these people. And for me, I feel exactly what you said, all of that stuff accelerated my growth, and it was purely accidental. I just thought I like people, I like hanging out. So I want to hang out with people that are doing this work or in this industry. And I was hanging out with people that were more experienced than me, that were getting bigger, better clients, working really cool jobs. And I was like, man, I want to, and I just think it's hilarious and just a happy accident that I upgraded my peer group without intentional. I just was like, well, this is what I want. So I should probably, hang out with those kind of people.
Yeah, I learned from people who have gone before, doing the things that I want to find people who are doing now what I hope to be doing, or I want to find people who are experiencing in their lives things that I hope to experience in my life. We call it role modeling, right? But it becomes role model is somebody that you can look up to and you can study and evaluate and learn from, whether you have a relationship with them or not. And somebody could be a virtual mentor as well, depending on how much content they're putting out into the world through books or webinars, courses, conferences, or podcast episodes, YouTube videos, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But man, when you can actually engage with somebody in conversation and get that direct feedback, and you're right, those things are every time you enter into a relationship with another person, where there seems to be a spirit of harmony, where this person is genuinely listening to you and they want to give you valuable advice that's going to help you along your journey. That fits the definition. You are a 2-person mastermind group for that conversation, and that's exactly. And the other thing is mastermind. While you and I talk about the fact that there was times when we had never heard of a mastermind and we haven't heard this language before. But everybody who is listening right now, you have all been in mastermind groups. If you're married, my hope is that you're in a 2-person mastermind group called a marriage relationship. Although quite frankly, I know that there are some marriages where there's not a spirit of perfect harmony. I get that. But I would imagine that most who are listening to us are in an incredibly long-running 2-person mastermind group called a marriage. And hopefully, if you have children, you're in a mastermind group called a family. And it goes all the way back to study groups back when I was in college. And I'm like, listen, I've taken incredibly copious notes, but there are some concepts I don't understand when I read my notes back. Would anybody here like to join me in studying for the next 3 weeks for this final that we got coming up? I think I have a lot of value to bring to the table. And if you could help me understand some of these things, I think we'll all benefit. And so I'd put together 5-7-person study groups to help prepare for a final exam. That's a mastermind group.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Just a broad stroke there. Lots of different kinds. Most of us have experienced them in some way, shape, or form. figuring out how to have healthy, beneficial mastermind groups, I think is so worthwhile. Are there any other benefits that stand out that we haven't covered? If somebody's like, it sounds cool. Like, well, do you have to be extroverted? Do you have to, be super vulnerable? Like, there's probably some personality things that might make it sound like, oh, you have to be like this or that. But anything else come to mind?
Well, personality traits really has nothing to do whether or not, you're a good fit for a mastermind group. I mean, you'll want to find a group of people that I think there should be some sort of affinity. It's not necessarily, it's not even a similar philosophy of life, although you may desire to be a part of a group that has the same philosophy of life or religion than you do. It's not required, though. So just like it's not required that everybody in a mastermind group have the same philosophy, the same faith, certainly it's not required that you have the same personality styles or introverted, outroverted, none of that stuff. What I think is important is having an affinity. That means that there's something that connects everyone in a mastermind group, whatever, and it can be anything. So for example, in a Bible study group, it's probably the fact that we're faith-based and we all have a desire to learn and grow and study in our faith. That we want a deepening faith that is more meaningful than just one day a week kind of deal. We want to live a life in a way that is representative of what we believe. So that's the affinity of a small group Bible study, right? And so I host and facilitate something called the Next Level Mastermind. The affinity there, it's every member is somebody who is full-time self-employed or who will become full-time self-employed within the next 12 months. And if you're not on the full-time self-employed journey, it doesn't make sense to just bring somebody in who's kind of dabbling with a little side hustle, but they don't ever plan on being full-time self-employed. Because the affinity is we want people in this group who knows what it's like to not be guaranteed that next paycheck, who understands the risk involved in owning your own business. So that's what I really think is important is when you're thinking about a group, what do I have? What is the common thread that runs through? And there might be multiple, but at least one common thread. Are we all video producers? Are we all self-employed business people? Are we all just looking to live our best life and have a positive view of the world, that's a pronoia view of the world? Have you ever heard of pronoia, by the way?
No, I have not.
So paranoia,
sounds cool.
It's the opposite of paranoia. Paranoia is this mindset that everything's out to get me. That life is always happening. Life is always throwing things at me, always challenging me, always bringing me down. I'm just waiting for the next shoe to drop. That's paranoia. What's coming my way next? In a negative way, I'm just waiting for the next time that I'm going to fall down, because every time I take 2 steps forward, I get 3 steps back. That's paranoia, right? Now, I know that there's a more clinical definition of paranoia, but just work
Close
with me
enough.
on this.
Yeah.
All right. Pronoia is the opposite. It says, listen, life is happening for me. Every situation, every circumstance is happening for my benefit. Even if all of a sudden I'm like, man, my financial income is great and all this stuff, and then some circumstance happens and I lose 60% of my income overnight, I'm like, wow, what an incredible experience. Now, this was unexpected. I'm not thrilled that it's happened, but I want to ask myself, what does this make possible? I know that there's going to be some growth that happens. I'm going to be caused to I'm going to have to pivot as a result of this. I just believe that everything is meant for my benefit. I'm going to learn and grow through everything. And everything that I have to overcome, especially because I'm a coach, I've got more examples to share with others. I got more stories to tell. This is going to make a great story one day. That's pronoia. And so maybe your affinity group are people who are just devoted to seeing the world through a pronoia lens, that life is happening for me, not to me. I am the creator of my life. I am not the victim of life. And then, Ryan, I know you want to wrap here soon, so I want to just share with you, because you asked about the benefits that we haven't maybe touched on. This is what I love about mastermind groups. I tell you, I'm an incredibly limited person, but so are we all. Now, I have tons of education. I have all of the education that I had in schooling and college and all that other stuff, all the online courses that I've taken. I've got all of the conferences. I mean, countless thousands of hours of podcast episodes I've listened to, books. Oh my gosh, books galore. But my education is limited to all of that. So there are an infinite number of books I have not read. There's an infinite number of teachers I've not learned from. There's an infinite number of podcasts, documentaries. There's an infinite number of other educational sources out there that I've not read. So if I get into a group with 4 other people, all of a sudden, every single one of those people bring all of their education. Cliff, I was just reading a book the other day about this. It's Key Person of Influence. It's, how to run your business this way, how to do this. It's like, man, I have no desire to read those books, but I'm thrilled with that $5,000 insight you just brought to me.
Right.
Thank you so much for saving me 7 hours of my life where I don't have to read that book, but I can instantly benefit from the fact that you did. Mm-hmm. So you benefit from the education of others. Now, I have tons of experience. I've got decades of ministry. I've got more than 10 years of sales experience as an insurance agent and serving people in that capacity. I've got 15 years full-time self-employed in a digital online business. I've done online courses. I've done professional keynote paid speaking internationally. I've hosted my own paid conferences. But guess what? I've never written a book. Never written a book. If I ever want to write a book, it's cool to be in a group with 5 other people. And it's like, you know what? I've self-published 7 books. I actually have, I've worked with a publisher too, on 2 different book projects, and to have the ability to share their experience. So everybody brings their experience. So here are the things, you get the idea. Every person in the group has their own education, their own experience, their own areas of expertise, skills, talents, abilities. And I wrote these down here. They have their own resources. Yeah. I can't begin to number of time. I'm like, hey guys, I really want to. What is the best transcription service that's not going to cost me an arm and a leg to transcribe this, 3-hour workshop that I just did? And they're like, why don't you just Dropbox the recordings over to me and I'll run it through my software and I'll send you the PDFs. Okay. There was a time when my friend Leslie Samuel, who's in my Green Room Mastermind group that I was telling you about that Pat and I started in 2010, Leslie says, Cliff, I see your online course, Podcasting A to Z, and I see how you will put it all together because you shared it in your hot seat. Why don't you do this plugin on WordPress? And I'm like, well, I tried it and I just didn't like how ugly it was. He goes, well, look at mine. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. He goes, do you know who did this? My virtual assistant in the Philippines. He says, I have her 40 hours a week. I'm only able to come up with about 20 hours worth of work. If you'd like, I am already paying her no matter what. Why don't I just give her to you for 20 hours a week for the next couple of weeks and she'll just design it for you, and just my gift to you. Shared resources, my friend. It's an amazing thing. And then relationships and influence. Getting connected to other people is an incredibly powerful tool in this world. It's not what you know, but who you know. You've heard those statements. And then influence. I mean, gosh, I can't even begin to tell you the number of times I've been on other people's podcasts that in our thing, or guest on YouTube channels and all that other stuff. So education, experience, expertise, skills, talents, abilities, relationships, resources, and influence. Everybody has some level of that. And everybody says in the group, I'm bringing all that I have to the table, and I will bring it to bear for the success of every person in this group. Every person in the group committed to the success of every other person.
Man, I just feel like, how can you not be in one? Although, it took me a long time to actually join one. But it's like the resources and the infinite, the synergy, that word, it's amazing. I mean, it is like the group that I'm leading, it's a bunch of other video business owners, and, somebody's like, oh, we got this shoot in Colorado, and somebody's like, well, hey, like I'm not sure where you're going in Colorado, but I've got this producer or this guy, that can help you. And it's like, oh, sweet. I could post in the group and like, I'm going to get a bunch of, people I don't really know, but like, here's this like trusted group of people. And I love the idea of like the resources. I mean, that is such a good one. It's like, well, summarize the book in 2 sentences for me. And oh, okay. That's pretty much any book anyway that I take away like 1 or 2 things. So,
or there might be a ton more in the book, but man, just in time learning. I'm a fan of just in time learning. And they're like, hey, Cliff, here's what I learned from this book. This, and they might even read a chapter or not a chapter, but a paragraph or 2. Let me just read this to you. Or they'll shoot it over to me in an email. They'll copy and paste from their Kindle. And I'm like, this is brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I'm glad that we're talking about this because, obviously masterminds have had a huge impact in your life. And actually, I will say that I don't think I would be here right now if you were not a part of if you and Pat didn't start the Green Room Mastermind forever ago, because Pat's podcast was the first podcast I ever listened to of an online business owner, like doing this thing and I listened to like so many of his shows. This microphone that I have is influenced. I don't know if you told Pat to.
I told Pat.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, I wouldn't have the guts or the know-how or anything to have started this show 5 years ago if it wasn't for listening to Pat and knowing that, it's like all these connections. I'm like, holy cow, this is crazy. So I love that we're talking about this. I think it is incredibly valuable. I mean, I host the Onward Summit, this in-person event at our studio, and we get people to come together, and that's been really, really incredible to do that and to, just to do life in just a short couple of days with people. But to have consistency, to be able to show up, week after week or month after, like whatever the rhythm is, but to have that consistency for accountability, for shared resources, for help, to overcome frustrations and struggles, to have that and to know that these people have my best interest in mind and they want to help me, they want to serve me. I think that's just one of the greatest gifts and one of the fastest ways to accelerate your business and your life.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for just the way that you talk about this, the way that you lead by doing this through example. I'm super grateful, and I hope some people are inspired to say, whether they jump into a paid group or start their own free group, it is worth taking that step and pursuing it.
Absolutely. Tony Robbins says the quality of your life will be dependent upon the quality of will be dependent upon the expectations of your peer group. So the quality of your life will be determined by the expectations of your peer group. So the question is who are you spending the most time with, and do they tolerate you just living a mediocre life, or are the people you're surrounded with, do they inspire you? When you actually engage with them, do they call forth more from within you? Not that they're like saying, hey, you need to step it up, buddy, but just naturally, do you feel elevated by being in the presence of your current peer group? And this is why, Ryan, I actually started a brand new podcast recently I started it in November 2021. It's titled Upgrade Your Peer Group. Currently, as we're recording, there's 4 episodes, and you can find it at upgradeyourpeergroup.com. 4 episodes that talk about this mastermind principle in greater detail. Lots of stories and examples of my experiences with mastermind groups. More importantly, and most importantly, the things that I did in mastermind groups that were absolute miserable failures. I love sharing my failures more than I love sharing my successes, although I love sharing my successes, but I love sharing my failures even more because I would love everyone to go out and have their own hosted mastermind groups. I think it would be beneficial for everyone to be a part of a mastermind group facilitated by someone else, whether it's paid or free. But I believe everyone should also benefit the lives of others by facilitating a mastermind group, whether That's it's good. Paid or free. And I talk about all of those, how to do paid, how to do free, what to avoid, how to find group members, all of that stuff. Upgradeyourpeergroup.com is the podcast.
Yeah, I love that. And that actually was, you shared that podcast with me, I don't know, a month or so ago. And I listened to plow through all the episodes and I was like, man, I need to start the new year talking about this, sharing this with other people. Let's get Cliff on the show and let's talk about masterminds. So, I'm glad that we are. And like I said, hopefully we're kind of scratching an itch for some people to say like, you know what, maybe I need to look into this more. You'll love Cliff's buttery voice and huge insights. If I say, here's what's so great about Cliff is he loves Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins has these amazing nuggets that Cliff, he dropped at least a couple of them on this episode, but Tony stuff and his events, all that stuff is like, I mean, you can spend a lot of money following Tony Robbins. So Cliff, thank you for saving us so much time and money by, giving us some solid Tony Robbins nuggets.
It's my pleasure, my friend. I used to feel a little guilty about sharing so many things that I've learned from Tony Robbins over the years until I finally got into enough of Tony Robbins' materials to realize that he got his start following a guy named Jim Rohn, who was basically the Tony Robbins of prior to Tony Robbins. And there's a whole quote that I have from him where he says how he was working as a janitor, making $40 a week, and went to his first Jim Rohn seminar that cost $35. So basically a week's worth of pay. Actually, it was more than, because he had to travel and stay in a hotel. He says like 2 weeks worth of pay to go and attend one of these workshops or seminars is what he called it. And he said Jim Rohn changed his life. Now, I've since gone back and started listening to some Jim Rohn material. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I know where Tony got all this. and then I'm reading Psycho-Cybernetics by It's like, oh, that came from Tony Rohn. No, 1965 was when Dr. Maxwell Maltz said this. And I'm reading all of and of course, when Tony, I follow Tony. I've listened to thousands of hours of Tony Robbins materials. And whenever Tony mentions a book that he's read, I go and read the book. And it's like, gosh, yeah, Tony's been communicating what he's learned from others in his own way with his own stories. And I'm like, well, I no longer feel guilty about sharing all these Tony Robbins quotes anymore.
Good. I'm glad. Cliff, this was super fun. Thank you so much for your time today. How would you like to leave us?
I just want to say, go get yourself intentionally into a mastermind group. If you didn't pick it up early, you've already been implementing the Mastermind Principle several times in your life, and it's been successful for you on many occasions. Some of you've probably heard about mastermind groups. You went and joined a free one or something like that, or you launched your own free one, and it was an incredibly miserable experience. And I hope out of our conversation today, you learned that it's just the fact that you missed the key ingredient of this spirit of harmony. And maybe it might have even been a spirit of harmony with yourself. And so there's an area to grow there. Get yourself into a mastermind group. Go out and launch a mastermind group. This is how we can transform the world, one relationship and one small group at a time. That's how I'd like to leave this conversation.
I love it. Make sure you check out that podcast, upgradeyourpeergroup.com. Cliff Ravenscraft, you're the man. Thank you so much, Cliff. That's a wrap.
Thank you so much, Ryan Crowley.
I said that's a wrap. If you are interested in learning more about the weekly Studio Sherpas Mastermind, go to studiosherpas.com/mastermind. There's an application there to fill out if you think that you might be a good fit. Regardless, I hope that one of your biggest takeaways from this episode is the importance of upgrading your peer group, starting your own mastermind, or jumping into a mastermind that already exists. I would love to hear from you. Where are you at with this whole mastermind idea? Love it, hate it? Have you done it before? Are you currently in one? And how's it going? If you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, leave a comment. Let us know. I'm curious. I just feel like the majority of videographers, filmmakers, people that I know aren't in something like this that is for the growth of their business. And like I mentioned in the interview with Cliff, like the Mastermind Principle is something that I, accidentally fell into, and really, when I think about like what if there was like, you know, just a small handful of things that have led to the success that I've experienced and the growth that I've experienced, so much of it points back to surrounding myself with people with this mastermind concept. So I want that for you too. I think that's all I've got. Another reminder about the challenge, the 5-day challenge. You can go register for that totally free event, studiosherpas.com/challenge. And if you're not a part of our Facebook group, you can go to studiosherpas.com/community. There's lots of things you can do. You can plug in, you can meet people, you can join our challenge. You can follow us on Instagram at Grow Your Video Business. I'm at Ryan Coral on Instagram. And if you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Would love to hear from you. And cheers to an incredible, amazing 2022. It's going to be great because look at you. I mean, you're doing the things. You're trying to educate yourself. You're trying to learn, trying to grow. So that's awesome. You're awesome. We're awesomer together. Glad you're here. And I'm going to go now. See you next week.